Hi, it's Rachel Greig, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can alter some index cards. These are some craft index cards that I've picked up from an office supply store, and it's really cool to be able to use some office supplies in your card making or your art journaling or your traveller's notebooks or other projects. So these little index cards, they're quite small. They're only 5 by 3 inches, which let me just measure here, is about 125 millimeters by 75 millimeters. So that's a nice little size there that can fit on top of your cards and inside your journals, especially little traveller's notebooks. They'll fit really nicely in there, so you can use them as little flips or tip-ins. You can put some journaling on the back of them if you just want some little hidden journaling somewhere. So they're just a fun little accessory or addition to your normal project making. These craft ones are really nice. They've got the alphabet on the edge, like little alphabet tabs on them, so they're like a little filing system, analog filing system, and I just really like the craft base of them, so they're just going to be a really nice base for what I'm doing here with my projects. So this little piece here that I'm doing, this is just a stamped piece here that I've created using the Fine Flowers stamp set, and it's just left over from a previous project, and I thought I'd just trim it down and just use it here to put on top of the index card. And as you can see here, I'm just having a little fiddle here with the glossy accents. It just got a little bit stuck there at the top, and I just used a little awl there to unstick the glossy accents just at the nib there, so then it would run out again. So I'm just sticking that down or rubbing out all that glossy accents so it doesn't have any lumps and bumps, so when I stick it on top of the index card it'll be nice and flat. So this little stamped piece, it was originally going to be used for a card, but I've actually trimmed it down now to fit on top of the index card, and then just needed to finish off some of that ink blending around the edges at the top there. That's where I trimmed it down, so I just used that Right Persimmon Distress ink just to finish that off, added a little bit of extra stamping with the splatter texture and finished that off there. And now what I'm doing is I'm going to start one from scratch so you can see how I've created the entire thing, but this time I'll be using some different colors. I am using the same stamp set. This is the Fine Flowers stamp set, so I used that echinacea flower there on the left, the orangey yellowy warm colored one, and now I'm using a different flower here for this one, and I'm stamping it up using the Archival Jet Black ink, which is a really fabulous ink to start with, because I will be doing some watercolor over the top, and when you use archival ink, it's a permanent ink, so it's not going to blend out or bleed or do anything like that. It will stay in place when I put anything with water over the top. So now I'm just choosing some distress ink colors, and for this one I'm going to be using some shaded lilac and some blue colors as well, just to keep this on the cooler tones. So I've done the warm tones for that left one, and then now I'm going to be doing the cooler tones for the right one. So I've put some of that shaded lilac just on an acrylic block, and I'm using that acrylic block as my little palette there, and I'm just using a water brush to pick up that ink and then color in the petals. So this color that I'm using now is Tumbled Glass, and I'm just blending it out with that shaded lilac. And so I started the flower with the shaded lilac in the center there, and then now I'm just doing the outer edge of those petals with the Tumbled Glass. And the good thing with distress ink, it does blend really nicely together, so those colors will then blend together on those petals. And also the one thing I really like about doing the watercolor technique with the distress inks is you don't need to be very accurate with your coloring. You can just color in and be a little bit outside the lines. It just gives it that nice little whimsy look when you're doing your coloring. So the color I'm using now is Crushed Olive, which is a really nice color for the petals. It's kind of like a brightish green. So it's just, it's a really nice uplifting sort of color when you want to use brighter colors for your projects. So I've just finished off all that coloring. I'm just wiping up any sort of excess ink that I've got around, and I've got a fair bit on my non-stick craft sheet from the previous one where I was using that orange, and because I don't want any orange going on to this project, I just had to clean that off, so I didn't start bringing in that orange into this project, because as you can see now, I'm now doing the shading around the edge, which means I am starting from that matte to work in, and if there was anything or any leftover ink or colour on that mat and I was starting from the mat, bringing that foam in would actually bring any colour that was on the mat onto my project. So yeah, I highly recommend that you clean your mat before you're doing any ink sponging, just in case you don't want any other new ink colours being introduced to your project. So I'm just using the shaded lilac and the tumbled glass now for the outer edge. I just want it to be nice and bright and not too dark around the edges there. And if you've never used these little ink blending tools before, they've got a piece of Velcro on the base of them, which means you can interchange your foams according to what colour you've got. So you really only need the one tool, and then you just need different colour foams for whichever inks that you're using. So it's a really cool way to have all your different coloured foams, and then you just use whatever one you need. So now I'm just adding some stamping just around the edges, and I'm using some texture stamps. These ones are the Splatter texture stamp and the Scratches, and I love these two. These are probably two of my favourite texture stamps out of our entire line, because they just give a really nice subtle kind of probably shouldn't say subtle, because I do actually want it to stand out, but it's just a really nice pattern, I should say. And it just looks like you've splattered, paint on there or ink, when really it has actually been stamped. So it's just an easy way to do it without actually making any kind of mess. And I just finished off there with some French script texture stamp, and that just gives a nice little script image to it as well. And layering up texture stamps like that is a really cool way of building layers and depth to your project as well. And what I'm doing now, just to finish off, is I have brought back the Broken China Distress ink, which is a bit darker than the shaded lilac and the tumbled glass that I used before. And this just gives it a really nice glow and finishing touch just to that outer edge of that stamped panel. And now what I'll be doing is adhering it down to the index card with the glossy accents. And I'm using glossy accents because I am using the heavy watercolour paper, so I want the adhesive that I'm using to be really strong, and the glossy accents is a really strong adhesive. And if you just blend it out there with your fingers so there's no really harsh lumps or big lumps, then it'll be nice and even when you press it down onto your cardstock. So here's my two little finished panels, and now I just want to add a few little sentiments on the top just to finish them off. So I've chosen these two little metal tags. These are a Tim Holtz Ideology product, and they've got little quotes inside of them that are really nice, little inspiring quotes, and I want them to really lift off from the metal edge. So what I'm doing is just grabbing a little bit of white paint, or you could use white gesso, and then just putting it over the top and just allowing it to dry just a little bit, and then smudging it off just with a paper towel or a little cloth here. So I'm just tapping it just to make sure it's dry enough, because if you do it when it's too wet, it's just going to lift out all of that paint from those words. So really what I want is I just want that that paint to sit in where those words are, and then you can easily read them. And now I'm just going to add some little twine to the edges just to finish them off. So I've finished off my two little metal tabs, and I just want to adhere it now to my index cards. Now, because the twine was quite thick, it is actually making the back of that really lumpy. So I'm going to use some foam adhesive, and I'm just trimming out this little skinny foam adhesive to fit onto the back of that. It's just a double-sided adhesive. And then now I can press that down onto my index card. If you wanted it to be flat on your index card, if you were using it inside journals and you wanted it to be flat, then you would probably use a thinner piece of the twine, or just like a tiny little thread rather than using a twine. So, and I'm just peeling out some of those little extra bits, making it a little bit more furry. And here we go, here's our finished pieces. So as you can see, my watercolouring is a little kind of all over the place, but that's what I love about it, because that's what watercolouring can be. It can be a little bit here and there. And then now I've got my other golden piece as well. So these are all finished and now ready to be put inside my journals or on the top of cards. So I hope this has given you some ideas on how you can use some of your own office supplies in your projects. Thanks so much for watching.